Are you ready for the word again?
Yes, sir.
Shabbat shalom to
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Turn to 2 Kings 4 and to, 1 Samuel 20. 2 Kings 4 and 1 Samuel 20. Today we're going to bring our teaching on the new moon to a temporary close. Temporary because I know that we're going to need to revisit it at some time, but I have no idea when that sometime will be. I have, through this teaching, stated repeatedly that there are 20 passages that use the phrase the new moon. And the 20 passages that use this phrase new moon all have in them the Hebrew word Kadesh, and that word means month, not new moon. Therefore, I have stated over and over again that in all 20 passages, the word month should have been used instead of the word new moon or the phrase new moon. And I have said that you could insert the word month, and you would find that the verse actually makes more sense if you do than if you add the phrase new moon. We've been looking at some of those passages. But of those 20 passages, there are two, and I just gave them to you, 2 Kings 4, 1 Samuel 20. There are two passages where it seems a little bit awkward to insert the word month. I'm saying that it's awkward because we sometimes want to understand the holy writings from a Western mindset perspective, and that makes it awkward sometimes because they weren't written from a Western mindset perspective. So we're going to look at these two places this morning because both of these two places, both of these passages are used as the go-to text for people who want to say that we should be celebrating the new moon every month. If somebody is going to talk to you about celebrating new moon every month, they're going to quote these two passages as their go-to. Okay, are you with me? However, let me restate these very important points for us to keep in mind as we read them. Point number one, the Hebrew word for new is not in these passages. The Hebrew word for new is chadash, and it's not in the passages. Number two, the Hebrew word for moon is not in these passages. The Hebrew word is Yareach, it's not there. The Hebrew word that is used is Kadesh, and Kadesh means month. And so we do not have justification to change that word that means month and change it to the phrase the new moon. We certainly shouldn't change it just because we read the word month, and when we read the word month it seems a little awkward to us. I mean, let's keep this in mind as we think on that. We have so many weird words in our language, in our English language. We have no right to raise our eyebrows at someone else's language because it seems a little awkward to us the way it flows. Right. For instance, we might say this: the farmer dusts the crops while his wife dusts the house. Well, they're not doing the same thing, are they? Right? Right. So if you didn't understand that term, it might seem awkward to somebody else saying, well, I can understand the wife dusting the house, but the farmer dusting his crops? Yeah. He's dusting 10,000 acres of corn? Right? Right. See, it doesn't make sense, does it? The farmer can cleave to his wife in the morning and cleave the beef ribs for dinner. Yeah. We hope he's not doing the same thing at both things, right? Right. We could say the farmer's horse can run fast, and we could also say he has a stump that he's trying to dig up that's being held fast in the earth. Right. How about this one? The farmer wants to trade his tractor in for a new one, and he wants his son to learn a new trade. Right? Someone that does not understand our language might have trouble grasping how words that are spelled alike, sound alike, look alike, can actually have two very separate meanings, right? Right. All languages have their own nuances and weird stuff. Right. So we have our own issues with our own language. And just because we read something in the Hebrew that makes it seem awkward to us, if we use the correct translation of that word, for instance, Kadesh, just because we say, okay, Kadesh means month, and we take month and we stick it in the verse, just because it seems awkward to us, does not give us justification for saying, well, let's change it to something that makes more sense to us. We can't do that.
Right.
All right, the two passages, let's look at those. 3 times we're going to see the phrase the new moon. Let's go to 2 Kings 4 first. 2 Kings 4, let me lay the context for you. In this first passage, there's a Shunnamite woman who, because of her kindness to the prophet Elisha, and because of the immeasurable love of Yahweh, she was allowed to give birth to a son when the possibility of that seemed minuscule. It seemed impossible that she could have a child, but because of her kindness, because of the immeasurable love of Yahweh, because of a word spoken by that prophet, she gave birth to a son. We pick up in the story in verse 18, and we find this narrative about that boy. Are you ready? Verse 18. When the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. And she went up, laid him on the bed of the man of Yahweh, shut the door upon him, and went out. She called unto her husband and said, send me, I pray you, one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of Yahweh and come again. And he said, why will you go to him today? It is neither, King James, it is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, Shalom. Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward, slack not your riding for me, except I bid you. Don't slow up, let's go. In other words, she drove that donkey that day the way Teresa drives her car every day. Right. Wide open as it would go.
That's right.
All right. She's not here. She can't protect herself, so I can pick on her driving, can I?
That's right.
We'll talk more about this passage in a moment. Now let's go to the second passage. First, keep something there to mark it, because we're going to come back to it in a moment. 1 Samuel 20, let me give you the context of it. David is serving in Saul's court and in Saul's army. Saul's jealousy of David is growing greater and greater every day. And David knows that his life is in danger. So he and Saul's son Jonathan are best friends. So David in 1 Samuel 20 is trying to talk to Jonathan about the danger that he's in. And Jonathan, as much as he loves David, does not believe David. He does not want to believe that his dad would try to kill him just because he's jealous of him.
Right.
And he protests to David that no, sir, there's no way that what you're saying to me is true. So what David is going to have to do is prove it to Jonathan. And Jonathan loves David so much he's willing to participate in a plan that will reveal to him one way or the other whether what David suspects is true or not. He's willing to go along with David so he can find out if his dad really does or does not want to kill David. So let's read about the plan. That's where we're at. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon. I should not fail to sit with the king at meat, but let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at evening. So they talk about the situation, and Jonathan agrees with the plan. Now listen to what Jonathan says in verse 18. Then Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and you shall be missed, because your seat will be empty. But what Jonathan is doing is restating David's plan. He's agreeing to it and saying, let's do it. You're right, you'll be missed. Let's see what happens. Now let's watch what happened. Verse 25. And the king sat upon his seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose. Jonathan stood up. And Abner sat by Saul's side. Sounds to me like Jonathan was sitting there. He got up so Abner could sit down. Abner is Saul's cousin, who is the commander of his armies. Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, something hath befallen him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Why comes not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? Before we read the answer, let me point out to you that in verse 27 it says the 2nd day of Kadesh. So the word Kadesh is translated as month here, but up in verse 18 and in verse 5, the same word, Kadesh, got translated the new moon instead of his month. Now, we're not going to read Jonathan's response right now, but you see there, he wants to know, where is the son of Jesse and why is he not here? And Saul becomes enraged when Jonathan answers his question, because he doesn't believe that Jonathan's telling him the truth. He's enraged because he is convinced, rightly so, that Jonathan is protecting David. So in his rage, he throws his javelin, or let me say it correctly, he cast his javelin at Jonathan. Well, when we read these two passages, it appears, when we read 2 Kings 4 and 1 Samuel 20, it appears that there must have been some kind of new moon celebration taking place that these people were accustomed to and they were participating in. But the truth is, if it appears that way to us, it's because we're assuming things that we should not assume. And we are inferring things into these verses that the verses do not state, nor do they even imply. When we examine the text, there is no Hebrew word for new, as we've already said. There is no Hebrew word for moon in the text. The only Hebrew word that's being used is the word Kadesh. Once it's translated as month, as it should have been. The other times it is changed to the phrase the new moon. And if we put in the text the word month, it may sound strange to our ears, but just because it sounds strange, I'm going to say it again, does not justify us changing it to something that sounds better. Right. All right? A word means what it means, and there would be far less confusion for people if we would quit trying to change the meanings of words.
Right. Yes, sir.
Whether we're studying the Bible or talking to people.
Right.
I mean, somebody comes up to me and they say, "What's up, dog?" I assume that they're talking to Malachi, Stella, or Pedro, one of the dogs that I feed at my home. Right? The word dog cannot be changed, should not be changed, to refer to another human being. Right. What's up, dog? Right?
Right.
Kadesh means month.
Right.
And I don't care how many people have tried to change it to new moon, it doesn't mean new moon. It means month.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether we feel awkward or not when we insert it in these verses. It means month, and that's what it should have been translated as. I don't know who changed it. I suspect that I know why they changed it. But the why doesn't matter in this discussion. The point is, Kadesh means month and should have been translated as month. If you were to change the meaning of it to new moon, then in order to do that, you need some justification for doing that from Torah, and there is none. There is no call in all of Torah to have an observance and celebration of a monthly new moon occurrence. Right. So let's look at these two passages, insert the word month, see if we can understand them apart from changing them. Okay? 2 Kings 4 again, verse 23. He said, why will you go to him today? It is neither Kadesh nor Shabbat. And she said, Shalom. He's trying to figure out why she has to go see the prophet today. He says, why today? Why is he confused? Because he says, listen to him, it is not the month or the Sabbath. Listen to me. It is not the month or the Sabbath. That sentence makes no sense to us, but evidently it made sense to him and it made sense to his wife.
Right.
It is not the month and it is not the Sabbath. So I'm confused. Let's just say it's a Thursday. He said, I'm confused why all of a sudden you got to go see this prophet on a Thursday. Yeah. And she said, Shalom. Well, if you break shalom down, I know in its basic meaning it means nothing missing, nothing broken. That's the very core of it. But it means to be full of health, prosperity, and peace. See? Why are you going to see the prophet today? Health, prosperity, and peace. Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good reason to me. All right, go on. Right? He said, it's not the month or the Sabbath. She said, Shalom. Now listen to me here. Perhaps the reason that somebody changed it to it's not the new moon nor the Sabbath is simply because that sentence made no sense to them. But if we refuse to make it say what it doesn't say, there are other options we have rather than changing the meaning of the word. Now follow me now. Stay with me. Here's what I mean. You cannot go to Torah and find a place that says you should look for the crescent moon or you should look for the new moon every month and celebrate its appearance with the prophet or with your family or with somebody else. You cannot find it in all of Torah. And we cannot go to the text and we cannot find what words? We cannot find the Hebrew words for new and the Hebrew words for moon, which are Kadesh and Yareach. Can't find them. So what we are left with is a text that says it's not the month nor the Sabbath. And if we allow it to say what it says, is there a way to look in Torah and see if Torah can help us make sense of what we just read? And the answer is, yes, we can. I'm going to share with you 5 verses. Some of them you've already seen, some of them you haven't. Are you ready? Exodus 12:2. Turn there. I want you to lay your eyes on it. Exodus 12:2. Exodus 12:2 says, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Does anybody remember what the Hebrew words use? There's 2 Hebrew words translated the beginning of months. Anybody remember what those are? Okay, the Hebrew word for month is what? Kadesh. Rosh or Rosh Kadesh. R-O-S-H-E. So this month, what it says is, this month shall be unto you Rosh Kadesh. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So this month shall be unto you Rosh Kadesh. Rosh means head. Kadesh means month. This month shall be unto you the head month. Well, what does that mean? The next phrase explains what that means. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Make this the head month. Make this the first month. This is the month that will start all of your years. Okay? Everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
What is a Rosh Kadesh? What does the word Rosh Kadesh mean? Head month. What does the head month mean? It begins the year. Simple. Verse 2. All right, now go to Numbers 10. You there?
Yes.
Verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness and in your solemn days and in the beginnings of your months, Rosh Kadesh. Mark that now. In the beginnings of your months, same phrase used in Exodus 12:2. In Rosh Kadesh you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. So Numbers 10 is telling you a lot of different times you should blow a trumpet. One of the times you should be blowing a trumpet is during Rosh Chodesh. What does the word or the phrase Rosh Chodesh mean? Head month. What does the phrase head month mean? The first month of the year. So Numbers 10 says you should blow a trumpet at that head month, either at it or during it, or both. You should be blowing a trumpet. All right, Numbers 28, verse 11. You see that phrase again, verse 11. And in the beginnings of your months, Rosh Chodesh. Same phrase. In the beginning of your months you shall offer a burnt offering unto Yahweh, 2 young bullocks and 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot. So Numbers 10, verse 10 tells us that we should be sounding a trumpet. Exodus 12 told us which month it was. Numbers 28 says, we should not just simply blow a trumpet, but there are, sacrifices that are to be offered. Everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Go to Ezekiel 45. Look in verse 18. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, in the first month, in the first day of the month, you shall take a young bullock without blemish and cleanse the sanctuary. You see the word first used twice there, but it is one word in English, first month, first day. But in the Hebrew, the first, the first time you see the word first, it is the Hebrew word rishon. Rishon comes from the Hebrew word roshe. Roshe means the head. So in the head month, in the Akkad, and we had a handout, and there's some extra copies in there now. We had a handout that showed the 12 places that the word Akkad is used when dealing with the month, the first day of the month. When they want you to know they're talking about the first day of the month, the Hebrew will say Akkad Kodesh, first day of the month. So here, Yahweh says, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, in the head month, in the first day of the month. So on the first day of the first month, they're calling upon an observance, a celebration of that month with some sacrifices. Everybody see that? All right, now pay close attention to this next one. We haven't looked at it yet. Are you ready? You're going to do better than that. I'm not even going to tell you where it's at.
Yes, sir.
You have to go find it yourself. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Deuteronomy 16. This should clear up, if there's been any confusion at all, this should clear up all confusion concerning what takes place in the celebration of a month. Are you ready? Deuteronomy 16, look in verse 1. Observe the month of Abib.
Wow.
Does it need to be any more plain than that? Everybody say that with me. Observe the month of Abib. Say it again. Observe the month of Abib. Now it goes on after that and starts talking about what to do concerning Passover, which comes when? The 14th day of Abib. We know from Exodus that on the 10th day of Abib, they're setting the lamb aside. But this doesn't say, well, during the month of Abib, celebrate Passover. What does it say? Observe the month of Abib. There is to be a celebration of that month. That is what Exodus 12:2 was telling us. That's what Numbers 10 was telling us. That's what Numbers 28 was telling us. That's what Ezekiel 45 was referring to. The month of Abib is to be celebrated. Now it says here, observe in the King James. The Hebrew word for observe is that beautiful Hebrew word that we know so well. We may not be able to write it out or recall it right now, but we know what it means. That is the Hebrew word shamar, S-H-A-M-A-R. And the Hebrew word shamar means put a hedge about something with thorns. That's the literal meaning of that word, to hedge about with thorns. The Hebrew word shamar means mark it, keep it, protect it, attend to it, guard it with everything you have. So Yahweh says, mark, protect, guard, keep the month of Abib. That's powerful.
Yes, sir.
That's strong. Right?
Right.
So now go back to the husband of the Shunnamite woman. I guess we could call him the Shunnamite man. I don't know why he has to be the husband of the Shunnamite woman.
That's fine.
The Shunnamite. Let's go back and see what he said. In 2 Kings 4:23, he said, why will you go to him today? It is neither the month nor Sabbath. He knows that the month of Abib is to be guarded and protected and marked and attended to. He knows that.
Right.
And he knows that it is not that month.
Yeah.
He knows that it's not the Sabbath. Therefore, he's confused. If this is not Abib and it's not Sabbath, why are you going to see the prophet?
Right.
If we let Torah and Ezekiel offer us this explanation that it did, this passage makes perfect sense. There is no need to change the meaning of the word Kadesh in order to try and make it make sense. He is stating, hey woman, this is not Abib. And this is not Sabbath. So why are you running off up there today?
Right.
Go back now to 1 Samuel chapter 20. Sorry, there was a request on Facebook to see all of y'all, so I am just... Greet the folks. There you go. We're kind of informal, aren't we? Let's see if we can get this turned back around. Do what now? Yeah, I'm glad you cleaned up too. Are you back to 1 Samuel 20?
Yes, sir.
David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the month. Verse 18, then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the month, and you shall be missed.
Yep.
It's the month.
Yeah, pretty simple.
What month would they be talking about if they are Torah observant people? The one that Deuteronomy 16 told them they better guard it and protect it.
Right.
Put a hedge about it and attend to it. The one that Exodus 12 told them was the head one. The one that First that Numbers 10 told them to blow a trumpet at. The ones that Numbers 28 told them to offer sacrifices to. That would be the month. Let me make these observations about 1 Samuel 20 as I close. I want you to notice that David nor Jonathan had to wait until they saw the crescent moon to know that a new month was beginning. I need to say that again. David nor Jonathan had to wait until they saw the new moon to say, okay, now it's time for the month to begin. Neither one of them said, tomorrow may be the day that the new month starts. We need to look for the moon to see if that's true. What did they say? Tomorrow, Kadesh. Tomorrow is Kadesh. They knew exactly when the next month would start without ever seeing the moon.
Right.
Wow. Listen to me now. They weren't speculating that it could be. They stated definitively, tomorrow is the day the next month begins.
Right.
And it is the month. Number 2, I want to say there was not a three-day celebration in place just to make sure they had spotted the new moon to make it official. In other words, they are not saying, well, we don't really know when it's going to begin, so we're going to have a 3-day celebration. It might start tomorrow, it might start the next day, or it might start the next day. So we're going to keep all 3 just in case we don't see the crescent moon tonight, tomorrow, or the next day. That's not what they did. Okay? It's never stated that way in the text. The 3 days are not tied to the moon at all. The 3 days are used for the sole purpose of testing the character of Saul. David knew, if I'm not there tomorrow night, he might not think anything of it, he might not say anything. But by 3 days, if I'm not there,
Right.
he's going to say something.
Yeah, he's
And we can know what's in his heart by what comes out of his mouth.
right.
Well, he was right. It didn't take but 2 days
Right.
to find out what was in that man's heart. And it was to kill David.
Right.
And he tried to put a good spin on that even. I'm going to sidetrack here just a minute. But he kept telling Jonathan, I hate him and I want to kill him, but you should hate him and you should want to kill him too, because as long as that man's alive, your kingdom will never be established. You'll never sit on the throne. He's going to take your place. Don't you understand, son? I'm trying to kill him and it's for you that I'm doing this. And Jonathan said to Dad, yeah, well, what has he done, Dad?
Yeah.
Well, that's all it took. Then Saul tried to kill Jonathan,
Yeah.
which revealed that it really wasn't Jonathan he was out to protect after all.
Right.
It was his own selfish greed of the throne he sat on. He was concerned that David was going to take it away from him.
Right.
That's a sermon for another day. It bothers me here that people think that there is a 3-day cushion being given to make sure you can spot the new moon to start a month, and until you spot it, the month doesn't start. That is far too inaccurate and imprecise of a means of timekeeping to be used by Yahweh.
Right.
See, the moon changing from phase to phase and being able to return to the same phase month after month, we call it. It's not 26 days sometimes,
No.
33 days sometimes, 18 days sometimes. It is always the exact same amount of time without changing. Exactly. And when the sun goes through its yearly cycle, it is precise. It is so precise, it astounds the human mind at how precise the sun is in its cycles and how precise the moon is in their cycles. Why then would we think that Yahweh would instruct us to watch for a new moon in order to start a new month, and that instruction to include a 3-day cushion in case we can't find it. He's more precise than that.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't sound like Yahweh to me. He's precise. His works are precise. His times are precise. There's no 3-day celebration of a new moon just in case we don't see it tonight. Number 3. All we really know from this passage is that there was a custom for David and others to sit and share a meal with Saul during this time. Whatever time it is. It doesn't matter what time it is. Whatever time this is it's being discussed, the only thing we know is that it was a custom for David and other of Saul's men and family to come and sit down and share a meal with him. That's all we know. There's nothing said about a new moon celebration. Okay? That's being inserted into the text when it does not belong there. The story of David going to offer a sacrifice in Bethlehem was a ruse to throw Saul off the trail. It was a ruse to expose the heart of Saul. David really wasn't going to Bethlehem to offer a sacrifice. Okay? Well, number 4, if we start with this premise that there is no word for new and there is no word for moon, and therefore the phrase the new moon should not be in the text, and if we translate Kadesh's month as it should be and put it in the text, then we arrive here at the same place that we did in 2 Kings chapter 4. And the same place we arrive at is that when David and Jonathan talked about the month, it's more likely that they were talking about Abib than they were anything else. Right. It's possible that Saul had some custom that he liked them to come see him at a certain time. It's possible that's a custom. But it's more plausible that they are referring to Abib than they are to anything else. If they are observing the beginning of a month, they are observing Rosh Kadesh, the head month, the month of Abib. Well, I want to bring it to a close now. Everybody understand that? Yes. Okay. Deuteronomy 16:1, mark it. Pay attention to it. It is a key that helps us to understand a lot of these other things that we have read. I want to close though by saying this, that last week, I started to close the service. I had you stand up. And then as I had you stand up, before I began to speak the words over you that Yahweh commands me to speak over you, Yahweh bless you and keep you, the word of Yahweh came to me. And I was certain of what I was hearing, but I wasn't certain of how to share it. And so I even paused and I said to you last week, hold on, I want to make sure I say this right. I knew what I was hearing, but I wanted to make sure I was saying it correctly. What I heard and what I shared bears repeating. Because it was the Ruach HaKadesh that was speaking to my spirit. Here's the summation of that conversation. We need to be very careful about changing the word Kadesh to the new moon. And we need to be careful about emphasizing the new moon or the crescent moon. We need to be very careful about doing that. Torah and the prophets were very careful to use the Hebrew word Kadesh. If they wanted to use another word, they would have. If Torah or the prophets had wanted to use the word chadash for new and Yareach for moon, they would have done that, but they didn't. They were very careful to use the word Kadesh, and they were careful to do this for a reason. It is the month and their beginnings that Yahweh wants to emphasize. Yahweh is marking time for us so we'll know when to make our appointments with Him. He does not want us to become overly focused on the timepiece that He's using to mark time. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
His emphasis is upon the time. He gave us a timepiece in the sky, several of them, but the moon is one of them, to help us mark that time so we'll know when to meet with him. He wants us to put our emphasis on the time and not on the timepiece. Ishtar, we're very familiar with her. More familiar than we wish we were. Ishtar has ties to the moon god. The emblem of the moon god, who in most cultures is called Nana. No relation to Nana. Nana. And I'm serious. When I first saw it, I was concerned about that. I looked. They're not even connected. Nana was a male moon god. And his emblem is the crescent moon. Allah is simply the renaming of that moon god. It is the same God with a different name. That's why Islam uses the crescent moon as their sign, because they are worshiping the moon god Nana. Babylon marked the beginnings of their months by the sighting of the new moon. But there is no instruction in Torah anywhere for us to do that. You can search Torah through and through. You will not find any instruction to spot, find, identify, see the crescent moon or the new moon. Well, if we don't do it by sighting it, then how else can we do it? Well, that's a question for another study, but the simple answer, I will give you the simple answer to the question. If we can't start the new month by sighting it, how are we going to do it? Well, you're going to have to do it with all of these instruments and stuff, and they didn't have those in the Bible days, so that doesn't make sense, people say. It's not that complicated. We don't have to have all of those fancy computer-generated technological advances to do it. All we have to do to know when the months begin is to use simple observation and simple math. That's it. If the moon is precise and we can calculate just simply by watching it and counting exactly when the full moon is, then we can also calculate and know exactly when it has gone into the very opposite of a full moon. And if we know when it has gone from full to nothing, then we know when it's going to become something. You see, it's done simply by math. And to say, well, they didn't know. How did Jonathan and David know when the next month was going to begin?
Google.
That app was not on their iPhones at the time. Right?
Right.
It wasn't. So how did they know? Believe it or not, they were smart enough to be able to count to 30. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
They could count, and they stayed outside. They weren't inside on their iPhones.
Right.
They were outside. They watched it year after year after year. They learned from some of these guys that lived 600, 700, 900 years. People that walked with Yahweh like Enoch, who had this testimony, he pleased Yahweh. He's telling them things. Things from him have been passed down. Those things have been put in Torah. They know how to calculate it, and so can we.
Yes, sir.
All right. So if Torah doesn't mention or instruct us to sight the crescent moon, then we should be very cautious about using that as a method for calculating the month. It's got its own problems, and we'll talk about that in another study. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to be offensive. I mean that only as a student and a disciple who heard that warning last Sabbath as I was teaching. I heard that warning. If the Torah doesn't mention nor instruct you to see the crescent moon, then you be cautious about using that as a method for calculating the months.
Amen.
In other words, avoid discussion of the crescent moon. Go to Job 31 and I will close. This is my final closing. I've had 3 of them today. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Job 31. Job is defending his integrity. He's explaining why the things that have happened to him should not have happened to him. Here is one of the defenses of his integrity in verse 24. If I have made gold my hope, or said to the fine gold, you are my confidence. If I rejoice because my wealth was great and because my hand had gotten much. If I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart has been secretly enticed, or my mouth has kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge, for I should have denied the Elohim that is above. In other words, Job says, I have done none of those things, and I do not deserve any punishment. And because of the heavy influence in that day of those who worshipped moon gods, Job took extra care to not even appear to be one who would look at the moon in an admirable way. The phrase, the moon walking in brightness, the word translated as brightness there means valuable or prized. So go back and look at the verse again. Verse 26, if I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking as though it was valuable, or walking as though it was prized. He's saying that he didn't see it as valuable or prized in his mind and heart. He said, because if I'd have seen it as valuable or prized in my heart, that would have been the same as me denying Yahweh that is above. It is not them that I prize and value. It is the one who created them that I prize and value. Are you with me? I'm not saying that he hid his eyes from it and said, oh, I don't want to look at that. That's not what he's saying. What he was saying is, I have protected my heart and protected my mind from overrating and overemphasizing the sun or the moon.
Right.
Or my wealth.
Right.
In other words, Job said, I'm thankful they're there.
Yes, sir.
They serve many benefits, one of which is a timepiece. I'm glad they're there, but I'm not going to overvalue them. I never have and I never will. Well, that's the same place we need to be.
Yes, sir.
It's a timepiece. We need it.
Yes, sir.
But we're not to value it above Torah. Right? Stand up. I summarized the last 7, 8, 9 teachings. I don't know how many we've done on the new moon. I've summarized all of those. Actually, let me correct that. They really shouldn't even be called studies on the new moon, because that's not what it is. It's studies on the word Kadesh.
Right.
On the months and how they begin. But I summarized all of that, took all of the different handouts we have and summarized them and concluded them and put them in one awesome little handout that I didn't print and bring with me. So if you'd like that emailed to you, if you'll let me know, I'll be glad to email it to you. I'll bring it next week. I'll make sure to get it in your hand. I'll post it on Facebook. It'll be there, but I did forget to bring it with me today. Any comment before we close? Yahweh bless you and keep you.
Yes, sir.
Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you.
Yes, sir.
Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace as his name is put upon you. so shall he bless you. Hallelujah. You're dismissed.